I am quite autistic, and I was recently diagnosed, so you know what that means. I have read a lot. I've read a lot about autism and a lot about autism in women. And as a newly diagnosed person, I want to talk about it because I feel like the best way to process information is to talk about it out loud. So that's what I'm gonna do. I wanted to talk about a specific author today, Jennifer Cook. Oh, Jennifer Cook O'Toole. Yeah, I I read three of her books. These are them. I will put them on the screen here as I talk about them, so I'm not just like holding up a book. Um, so I wanted to talk about them because one, it's three by a specific author, so I feel like it is a good place to start, and I couldn't really find like a comprehensive like review that I sort of resonated with when trying to find books about autism. So I'm going to sort of explain each of these in my own words, and hopefully if someone's looking for book advice when learning about autism or trying to find their own identity within books and autism, this will help. Also, if you hear noises, my window's slightly open. I can hear it, it's very loud to me. I might close that at some point because it's annoying. But I wanted to start. Well, let me give a brief introduction to these books. So, the Asper Kids Secret Book of Social Rules. This is the most recent one I read. I know we don't really use Asperger's anymore as a term because the guy who came up with it was special man. He was not cute. Sisterhood on the Spectrum, and then the first one I read was Autism in Heels. But I want to talk about them sort of backwards because I read these two before my diagnosis and I read this one after. So I want to start with this one and work my ways back. I'm gonna close that window because I can't concentrate. I have returned, and if you see my legs, it's because I'm sitting like a goblin, because that's the only way I can concentrate. So, I want to talk about this one first, because this book is sort of made for, I say 14, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. But the reason I wanted to read it was because as a late diagnosed person, I feel like I missed a lot of the formative advice and structure that comes with being diagnosed younger. You can sort of approach your development with like your cognitive ability in mind and your cognitive needs, whereas I never really had that, and I dropped out of school at 15, so there's a lot of nuance behind my teen years specifically. So I wanted to sort of go back and read something that I thought would sort of see what I missed. Essentially, I have a lot of holes in my social ability and in social rules. So I wanted to go back and see what I'm missing or if I can sort of build upon the knowledge, because when you don't have that secure base layer of how your own brain works and the things you are missing, you don't know what you're missing, which means it leads to awkward situations. And I never really understood the phrase healing your inner child, even though to some people the fact I live in a bubblegum palace could potentially be that. But I never understood it, and I think it's because I took it literally. Shocker. But I felt this book really helped because I knew a lot of the social rules in this. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh my god, it was like insane. I learned so much as a 23-year-old. I'm sure for like a 13 to 15-year-old that would be different. But it sort of explained a lot of the bottom up thinking behind these social rules that I did not understand, and I had no way to understand, because I know social rules without knowing the why. And the problem with my brain and the reason I got diagnosed is because I want to know the why. This explains the why. And it breaks it down in really simple words and simple speak. I think it took me probably like 4 hours to read this whole book, because it's just sort of broken down very simply. It has really cute illustrations, um, and I really appreciated that. But the thing I took away most from this book was a specific chapter on perfectionism. I'm a perfectionist. Hi. It is terrible. It is, I'd say, my biggest flaw. Perfectionism in every aspect of my being. Now, I thought that was okay, and it is okay, but I thought it was okay because I wasn't putting that ideal on anyone else. But this book explained to me why other people don't like my perfectionism and why they take it personally. And that was something I did not understand. And I had no concept of understanding. So I did learn from this book. And that was the main thing for me, was learning about, oh, perfectionism makes other people feel like shit. Oh, which sounds really obvious, but it was never obvious to me. So I really enjoyed this book. And I think if you want to, if you're a like diagnosed person like me and you want to sort of go back and sort of give yourself that foundation you feel like you're missing, when it comes to social rules and socializing, like it has a level of friendships and things like that, I would really recommend that, because I really struggled with those sort of core, the core understanding of why, and this sort of explained it to me quite simply and easily, and it's quite cute. And I think this is the 10-year anniversary edition, but I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it if you feel like that part of your life was missing a base that you're still struggling with. The next one we're talking about is Sisterhood on the Spectrum. I learned a lot from this book. Honestly, it's kind of stuck together because I got some paint on it when I was painting my room. So it kind of has like a pink thing going on, but I have highlighted a lot of this book. Mostly I've also like colored in a bunch of the illustrations. I will say the illustrations in all of her books are so cute, and I really appreciate them. I needed this book, and I needed to read this book, and I needed to read this book 10 years ago. I have struggled a lot with not only female friendships, but romantic relationships. I have struggled with understanding the attention of men, and I have ended up in some abusive and manipulative situations because I don't really know what's going on, and I'm here for the vibes. And then I end up in a fucking abuse cycle. Shocker. This book really helped me understand how that happens, and it really helped me see the pitfalls in my thought process. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean, I take things at face value. I feel like I don't understand the world, so I trust those around me to guide me and help me understand it, but because of that, I get taken advantage of. And this book really broke that down for me, and it was not something I fully understood. Like, I knew it was happening, but I didn't know why. And once again, this book brought it back to a why. And something in this book that kind of hit me hard was she described the difference between a man thinking you're hot and a man thinking you're beautiful. And I know this is very heteronormative, even as a queer girl myself, but that's just how this chapter was phrased because she's talking about her own experience. I did not realize the difference. And now, looking back at my life, understanding the words associated with lust and not of love, because through my life, it was always lust, and I did not realize that I was falling for people's lust and not love, which is tragic, and it kind of hurts to learn. It is a sad truth and it's a hard truth, but I feel much more equipped with this book. I don't know what the age range of this book is supposed to be honest with you. Probably I'd say 16 to 19, but I couldn't really tell you. But it really just helped me conceptualize what relationships, romantic or friendship, looks like as an autistic woman, and the red flags that I need to look out for my brain. And I just, yeah, I really, really needed this book. And once again, they have very cute like illustration pages. It was a tough read in certain parts. I will say it's a lot more lighthearted than Autism in Heels, which I will get to, but it still touches on some kind of difficult topics. It talks about female friendships and how to build, maintain, and like red flags to look up for. I really recommend this book. If you're struggling with your womanhood and dating and things like that, and how autism intersects with being a woman. And I'm sure, like, I'm talking about this as a very like white woman who lives in Ireland perspective, so I can only really speak to that, but I felt like it was really formative and important for me to read, and I am really glad I did, and I do recommend it. This was the first one I read, so the last one is now the first. This was recommended to me by my cousin who's in the process of getting her doctorate. Hi, if you see this, I don't know why, if you would, but hi. She recommended this to me. Her friend got diagnosed with autism, and she read this book and she really related to it. So this was actually the first book I read in conjunction to potentially getting diagnosed with autism. I can make a video about through my life, like the times I thought I was autistic, because I've kind of thought since I was like 7 that I was. This book was really difficult for me to read. Much like the Sisterhood on the Spectrum, once again there's paint on it, I swear there's paint on everything I own. It portrays autism within Jennifer's life. And she got diagnosed quite late, so it sort of goes through her life and shows the common thread of autism and her autistic experience, and it sort of builds upon a very basic like diagnostic criteria and where it is shown. And there was really tough reads in it because it does talk about how you can end up in dangerous situations because you don't understand them, and abusive relationships, and the different power structures that we're not always aware of. So I'd say if you're going to read this, make sure you're in a decent headspace, because it does touch on more intense themes. But for me, it was a very vital read, because this is the first book I have ever saw myself in. It is the first time where I was like, holy shit, I really am. I was right. Because her life parallels mine in a way that is deeply uncomfortable, but in a good way. Even it talks about a lot of things like eating disorders, which is, food is a big thing I've always struggled with, and I'm kind of open that I struggle with my perception of food and weight and things like that. And it talks about that and her thought process behind it, and it was one of the first times where I read an honest depiction of how I feel when it comes to such a complex thing as food. I really recommend this book. I think more so if you are a late diagnosed? What kind of diagnosed person like myself, where you are sort of recontextualizing your life and your experiences, and this sort of guides you through that process uh, in a way that is easy to understand, because it's intense. It is intense, sort of looking at your life and being, oh fuck, I am not unique, but in the best way possible. Nothing about me is special. Oh my god. So I do recommend this book, and it talks about the complexity of being the overachiever who feels less than. Because you put me in an academic environment and I will excel. You put me in a room full of people and I could not tell you what's happening. I believe there's a quote in this, which I'm paraphrasing, but how can someone be so smart and so dumb at the same time? I'm sure she put it way more eloquently than that. She's a great writer, and I am me. I'm heavily dyslexic, and that was something that I felt to my core, because people assume a lot about me. They, just based on how I present myself, but people assume I know more than I know and less than I understand. And that seems to be the running theme as well in this book, and I highly recommend it. Did I cry while reading it? Absolutely. But I needed to read this, and I'm so glad my cousin recommended it, and yeah, I just can't recommend it enough. So, in closing, I suppose I recommend all of those books. I will say as well, I've read quite a few books on autism, and I feel like you can really tell where in the world they were written. A lot of the books are American based, and I struggle to read them because I feel like autism and your experience with autism and masking is so contextual to where you live in the world, and I struggle to read American based autistic books because I feel like when I read them, a lot of my experiences aren't relevant and I don't relate to them in the same way. But even though I believe she's American, it made a lot of sense. And it's framed in a way that it's universal to her personal experience and not so much the experience of the world of her. So, yeah, even with my dyslexia, easy to read. I really enjoyed them. I felt a little bit embarrassed that I was reading like this one, the Asper Kids Secret Book to Social Rules, but I do think that a part of, for me, healing and processing and contextualizing my autism is going back, so I can move forward much more in tune with my brain and much more accepting of my circumstance. So yeah, I highly recommend her. I highly recommend these 3 books. I don't know if she has any more books than this, but these are the 3 I have read, and I suppose that is it. That is my review of the books. This is my first time doing like a proper book review, so let me know if it was okay. Let me know if you want me to talk about any other books I've been reading on autism, because there's a couple I really like. And let me know if you want to hear more about my experience with getting diagnosed or anything like that. other than that, I will see you around the internet, I guess. I am mostly on TikTok, and I'm speedrunning Barbie on Twitch because special interests be special.